Okay, so there will definitely be mixed reactions about that. Yeah, so labor, you could imagine there might be a few, smiles on their faces, but how that percolates and gets implemented, those are some of the issues, for perhaps consideration and explanation. Well, this morning we'll have Boason, business editor at Channels. Thank you for coming on this morning.
It's great day to be here.
So this pen that he put to paper,
yes,
on the minimum wage,
yes,
how much of a smile is he going to put on the workers' faces, especially if they know that if I get to my landlord or the market, they might ask me a question or two with the prices?
I think we've had a minimum wage conversation for a couple of months, and I think most of last year that was part of the both economic and political considerations. You remember the NSC says any state government or state governor that does not support the 30,000 will not get a re-election, whatever it was. So it was all part of the political discourse and threats by the Labour's union. But I think the market, as it were, would have priced in this particular development. But again, we expect people to react when they're sure that the money will be paid. I think some labor unions are asking that this be paid as immediate as possible. We're in April. Some are saying perhaps this could go into the month of May, a wage bill. The government, on the other hand, the Buhari's administration seemed to be prepared in terms of getting this done on the federal level. So it's gone into the 2018 or 2019 budget. And through the Ministry of Finance, they've also tried to begin to look at the fiscal position of the government, whether in terms of borrowings or new taxes, including the Inland Revenue Service, to find where this money is coming from. Bismarck Rewani's committee that looked into the funding options for the government. The government is acting very quickly to put that into paper. Again, the administration will have to do something very quickly about this at a time when conversations around petrol prices or petrol subsidy is coming to the table. If I have the thinking of the president or the administration, I think they would rather do the minimum wage first, before then look at the,
if at all,
take a look again at the petrol subsidy issue coming later. Because whether we like it or not, and this is making playing the devil's advocate, the people and we Nigerians must be willing to give something at the end of the day. I'm not too sure we'll be able to have a minimum wage increase. They will have petrol prices remain at 145 when the junior oil minister, deputy oil minister, Dr. Kachiku says the landing cost, everything is about 180 naira per liter. Then we still keep the same MITO for electricity at the current, I think about 2022. So
those are subsidies in their own ways.
Those are all subsidies that the current administration is carrying. And if you look at how the administration is also trying to borrow, so the president is under a lot of sweat and pressure, as I can imagine right now, trying to balance his socio-economic mindset with, like, let's make the people happy. The administration has tried a lot, and without trying to be patronizing.
Before you ask a follow-up, I want to follow up on your question. You said, how much of a smile? So the question now is, for how long is that smile going to remain on the people's faces?
We will have to, the administration has a very tough line to walk here. It's borrowing very furiously to fix power, fix infrastructure, trying to find means of creating jobs and let things happen. But again, life had been very tough for Nigerians. If you look at our exchange rate, the way we've come, even at the 360 or so that the central bank had tried to, we've been very fortunate that oil prices remain a little bit very nice over the last 1 year or two. But again, it's very tough here. The state governments would have to feel here. Look at what is happening at the state level, and I think that's where the big conversation should really be. Because the number of state governments can no longer borrow from the securities market. They can't issue promissory notes, they can't issue bonds. And some investment banks that are doing advisory to state governments, one of them reported a 48% decline in their profits for 2018 because state governments are not stepping forward. So the burden had been on the Buhari's administration, the government at the center, and trying to help the state governments to pay salaries and things like that.
Despite all accusations of over-centralization of many things.
Yes, again, look at the promissory note, about 150 more than billion naira that was recently issued by the Ministry of Finance. Part of it is also going in to help the state governments clear up some of the arrears. So no administration that I remember since independence or whatever had ever done so much for state governments, trying to help them keep afloat, prevent them from going into a full insolvency and bankruptcy, as it were, in the language of business. So it's tough. So this 30,000 will be a tough call for state governments. The federal government will try and swim its way through, but for states, that's where
the private sector
and the private sector. Oh, that's another thing.
Because you remember that just even before they came to this agreement, while they had that tripartite committee meetings,
yes,
the governors who say, look, we're the major stakeholder and pressure group here. So if we say we're not able to foot the bill for this 30,000 naira, that will be a big challenge. Don't forget, even the last time out where it was increased, some of them didn't pay what was agreed on the last time. So this is still going to be a challenge, is it? In terms of implementation and paying this.
I think we're getting to a point in which the government at the center will have to look the state governors straight in the face behind closed doors, wherever they meet, and say the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Look, we can no longer just carry you along on our back. You have to be productive. You have to be. You have to come up with something that will help. But again, this is a conversation that has been on the street for as long as I can remember. We need to trim down expenses from State House, from Governor's Lodge to the local government level.
And don't forget, too, in the mix in that conversation at the time was they also thought, well, if we have to pay this, the state governors, then maybe the federal government may have to do something about, reviewing the revenue sharing formula. So they get more revenue to the states such that they can foot this bill. What is good for business?
Well, for business, this is something because for an economy that you're looking at 60, 70, close to 80% informal economy, this will go straight to the market straight. I'm not sure, and this going to consumption, basically. A number of economists says, look, we're just paying for a bit of the backlog of money, and that this 30,000 should actually be around 60 or so, because this is already depreciated. If you look at inflation, exchange rate, by whatever, so 30,000 is already a past tense in terms of conversation, and not a current reality of things. But this is at least a good show of faith on the side of the federal government, trying to walk the economy forward with a bit of a backward kind of action, as it were. So it's going to be a real tough year for everyone down the line, and that's the truth.
Wow. You talked about two sectors now. On the one hand is the private sector we mentioned the other time. Yes. On the other hand is the informal sector, which you also mentioned just now. With the tremendous, scary unemployment rate, what's going to happen? How can the private sector bear this?
The private sector will have to adjust one way or the other. If you remember, the private sector adjusted during the recession in a number of ways. There were salary cuts, there were staff rationalization across the industries. There were talk about banks then laying off hundreds, thousands. Even the big banks, one of the biggest banks in Nigeria actually laid off a number. Some denied it, but of course. Then you're going to have, you had companies also adjusting prices of goods and services. I'm not sure if that these bananas and others will get affected by the price of iPhones.
I don't think they should.
Yeah.
It's not good for health.
It's not good. But this is healthy. This is the prices you see. Yeah. But again, if you go to, if you try to do shop, so you'll find the economy and business trying to adjust. You want us to pay higher minimum wage, then you have to do something for us. So this goes into tax, it goes into revenue, and all of that. The agencies of government, in terms of revenue generating agencies or MDAs, would have to really come up with what will help the government reduce deficit and put something on the faces of the private sector so that they will not say, well, minimum wage, because once you increase wage, pension liabilities are also involved. You have to pay pensions on those on the higher minimum wage. Across state government is a big story, but the private sector will be the one that will now sit down and say, well, but I think every private sector, having heard that this conversation had been on for months, by now would have done their homework as to how will this impact us, how do we adjust the books?
Yeah, and speaking about how will it impact us, what kind of consideration should we give and who should give it to, say, price regulatory boards or mechanisms such that you don't have people adjusting price of commodities in the markets with reckless abandon? How do we handle that?
It's a very difficult one here because you have, like I said, the bulk of your economy in the informal sector, not even just private sector, but informal sector, the bottom of the pyramid where...
And that's about 70% of any economy.
So the input, the output, the whatever are all
tough to regulate
something from the head. Whatever, I wake up, this is how I want to sell my thing because the woman selling next to me says this has happened. Not that they are aware. It doesn't have to have any dollar or for FX input or whatever. So they just decide that the prices should go up. So when you increase minimum wage, it's a very difficult thing to do in every economy. And it does not matter whether you are a big economy or you're a small one. Even in advanced economies such as in the Western world, US, Europe, France, Germany, once you increase minimum wage, you're dealing with a very serious situation. It's a very difficult thing to increase minimum wage. It has consequences across board.
Yeah.
It's not just because it's Nigeria. A number of countries who've done it. Increasing minimum wage, sometimes in other economies, is done sector by sector first. Then you decide whether it's the auto workers, automobile workers who should get it first, or the textile workers who should get this wage, or aviation workers should get it first. So that is in economies where you have very large formal economy where everything is nearly formalized. But in an informal economy, one single word that you have 30,000 now in Boason's pocket, and it's downstairs, and the landlord says, "Boason, good morning." Yes, you look at your landlord greets you twice. You know that's for your minimum wage coming through. But this is coming through about the middle of the year. Perhaps this won't come through on rents perhaps immediately, except those who are getting new mortgage or whatever. So we'll have to beg on employers of labor not to cut staff. But again, this is also another point for the government to work very speedily on electricity so that companies and industries can, and we're facing it here, we're spending so much on generators, they're breaking down every minute, every hour because they're overworked because of the pressure.
That's the elephant in the room.
That's the big elephant. So if you do that, you'll be able to help companies cut at least a sizable percentage of diesel and petrol and paying
another running costs.
Yes, I'm paying engineers and repair workers who seem to have found a very new opportunity now since they know there is no electricity. So when they repair your generator, they try to pull a few small something in there so that they can come back by Friday or Saturday.
Well,
because if they fix it well, you're not going to call them back very soon.
There you go.
So everybody's found some racket playing down there.
Yeah, but people should take it easy. Remember, they say stress could lead to heart disease. So
really?
They need to take it a lot easy.
Yeah. So front page.
It's still a good Friday.
Oh yeah, it's a good way to put out on the day of 30,000 minimum wage.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Boason, our business editor. Yes, indeed. So we're back in a moment. Stay with us.